Okay, we'll call this December 16th, 2020 Governor's UAS Council meeting to order. Starting with the roll call. Butch Huseby. Dan Olson.
Kind of here.
Partially here.
Another board meeting, so.
Yeah, we're going to try to get through
today.
The first part of the meeting fairly quickly for folks, so a couple others can jump off if needed. JD Jacoby, Dustin Temple, Gordy Kahn, James Strait.
Here.
Jason Smith, Jen Fowler, Mike Bosman.
Here.
Paul Sapaniak. Steve White.
Here.
Wes Sir. Joe Froelich.
Here.
All right, and myself. Okay, first off, I want to address, because there's a couple people that have other conflicts. What I wanted to do was look at the procurement process recommendation, the final memo and consideration, and determine if we can send that up to the governor's office. We're an advisory council, and I was just looking up to get a definition on if we actually need a quorum of a majority to move these items. We're not an official board, and so I don't know that the same rules apply, but I would like to still have that. We have about 50% membership here, so I may have to do a bit of a solicitation for people's support of this going forward. But I'll share my screen and we'll take a quick look about the couple things that have been added since last week, and then we'll have a discussion if we can, if we're good with moving this forward. So let me open up this document here. Oops, that didn't work. Oh yeah, I did. I was working on a different one this morning. All right, let me share the screen. All right, that should be showing the document we're discussing here.
Yep.
Good. Memorandum on U.S. procurement recommendations for state agencies. So I'm going to just kind of scroll through this. Purpose and scope haven't really changed. General requirements haven't really changed. And I'll take one last grammatical look through on this, but I think it's pretty set there. Cost and benefit analysis. That's primarily the same. When, let's see, shared UAS resource pool, this is where we added some language. Steve was gracious to actually do some research and pull up this paragraph here in red. So wanted folks to have eyes on that. Around aviation safety, the history of the FAA, starting with the Civil Aeronautics Act in 38. Then Eisenhower in 58 signed the FAA Act, creating the FAA. And then aircraft operations are subject to FAA rules in the National Airspace System. Steve also added a couple definitions to our definitions document about the National Airspace System. That there's an exam process for flying in that, the need for pilots and commands and certifications and such, and the responsibilities to maintain the aircraft safety, for the safety of the public, for equipment being maintained and operations of the safety of missions, highlighting the concerns of this for the council in the area of the shared resource pool. I added the words safety and liability are significant topics of concern. I did rearrange this a little bit, so the paragraph had been below this paragraph, and I moved it up to above the paragraph, but otherwise the wording is fairly the same here. Just trying to get a cognizant flow of thinking here. So we go from addressing the fact that the audit suggested a shared pool of UAS resources. why, similar to the motor pool, why we started going into discussion why the UAS resources that is different than the motor pool, the history of the FAA and regulations over that, responsibility of the pilot and commands, safety and liability are a concern of the council. And then a more discussion on the liability involved with UAVs under a shared model, and some of our concerns there. I did pull out the sentence, which doesn't show up well here because I didn't properly do track changes, I guess. I pulled out the sentence talking about the difference between a motor vehicle and a UAV and falling out of the sky. I just felt kind of funny about that sentence. So I didn't think it was necessarily needed to emphasize the liability piece on it. And then I added this paragraph here. One of the things in this section that I felt was lacking as I was reviewing this this week is that the audit was recommending the shared pool of UAS resources as a means of cost management, so that agencies aren't being redundant and procuring, since this is the procurement recommendations document, procuring UAS devices. And so I felt like we didn't address, we talked a lot about safety and liability and the concerns of liability and the risks of that under that model, but we didn't directly address costs. And so I added this paragraph here, and I'll just read it for the sake of the council. Furthermore, with a fairly low financial barrier to entry into developing a small UAS program and the rapid adoption of the advantages of the technology for ad hoc missions, a shared pool offers little in the way of cost savings. What savings are seemingly achieved will be consumed by the logistical efforts to manage the pool and to acquire a shared device for distributed missions across the state, and will be quickly offset by the increased risks and liability outlined above. So I open that for any comments on this, if that's something agreeable and accurate. My thinking there is most of the agencies' UAVs tend to be the prosumer type model that we're using right now, which really don't cost that much, and so the savings of sharing those really isn't a whole lot of money when you look at the larger picture. And then we go into what we had beforehand, that if the state still wanted to do it, here's the recommendations. The pilot should go with the device, and a centralized office should be set up to manage all these things and to make sure that there isn't incidents that would increase liability to the next agency that picked up the device to use it, and to maintain those things. And then reiterating that we did not see that model of being one that would be quickly adopted by the departments at this time, with the thinking that if as this matures, perhaps there would be an opportunity down the road. But if it matures similar to aircraft owned by agencies, then it's still probably not. More of an MOU or an external procurement of services would be more realistic for the state model. Any comments or thoughts on those paragraphs there?
My comment, I reflect on what you said there, and I like it. The thing that I just kind of thought about was really is true with the low cost of the equipment, that really managing the UAS component of the agency is just managing it. The cost of managing it is going to exceed the cost of the equipment, I think. Because in some instances, equipment is pretty inexpensive. And so when I look at this, I think, well, yeah, really, you're not talking about a lot of money for equipment. And that's why you usually don't insure it for, when it falls out of the sky. But it's the management of it that is going to really, and that's the safety aspect really, is how you manage it. But, the keeping track of the mission log and maintaining it and performance records and all the things associated with that part of the enterprise is it's not cheap. And so that's good that you brought that up. I like that. It's because that's probably something that I think is important for everybody that reads this or at the governor level to reflect on. Is that's what makes it somewhat dangerous, is that everybody can buy these things, but there needs to be associated management and responsible use attached to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Anybody else?
No, I'm good, Craig. This is Mike.
Okay. Looks like we picked up Butch and Hughesby. Thanks, fellas, for joining. So I don't know if you guys were on in time to hear what we're looking at is the procurement document, and these red pieces are what was added to the document that I just wanted to highlight to the council.
Yep, just following along here with you, Craig. Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, no problem.
Craig, this is Dan. I do like how you organize that. It sounds a lot in flow like before. So I think that looks pretty good.
Okay. Is there anything else that we should be saying in this? Steve kind of brought up a little bit more of I think what we're trying to address is the fact that if with a shared model, the big risk is that the maintenance piece is going to be inadequately addressed, right? And which is why we recommend, if you're going to do that, you should have an office responsible for all those pieces. So hopefully that's adequately addressed there.
I like it.
So I know some of these changes were made fairly late before the meeting, which is why I wanted to highlight it here. So do we feel that as a document, we have looked at it long enough and it is ready that we can send this recommendation to the governor's office?
I think so.
Or does somebody want to look at it more of the text and language that was changed there?
I looked at that earlier today and I'm good with it. I think we're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would second that.
Oh, this is Mike. Sorry. I haven't read the updated version, Craig. Can I have till noon tomorrow?
Okay.
I mean, I could do it by 5 tonight. I'm just trying to shoehorn it in between a bunch of other stuff.
Sure. No, and I'd appreciate your eyes on it. So I'm just trying to think how we can do this and still move this forward without having to delay it another week.
I'll have you my comments, Craig, before you get in the office tomorrow. How does that sound?
Okay.
Unless you get in at 4:30 in the morning, I'll have it. Okay.
Not most days. Can you post those to the Teams chat, Mike, so everybody can see it?
Sure.
Okay, so how about we do it this way to give time for that final review. Mike will post his comments, and then I will put a comments out in the Teams chat. So James, I think you said you liked it, and I lost track of, maybe it was Dan that seconded, or maybe it was the other way around. Can we consider that a motion to consider moving it forward? And then in the Teams chat, we will have people record their support from that once Mike posts his comments, and if we get the 7 yeses, then I'll move that forward by the end of the week. Does that sound fair?
Works for me.
You know what maybe would be good in the Teams chat would be to just to simply have whatever comments there are that are going to be added or whatever, but then underneath that maybe just have a little thing that says not voted by, not in favor of, type of thing, colon, and then we could just each type our names, and then you don't have to type our names with a line or anything like that for us to put a checkbox. But at least it would actually add to a record that we all looked at it and typed our name and we're signing off on it.
On the comments on the document piece, you mean?
Yeah, or on the document at the bottom, you could have a new page on the document that would just be an attached page or something that isn't really part of the document, but it would just be the last page of this document where we could just type our names, so like, Steve White, I'm okay, or, just type your name if you're okay with it. That way, I mean, then it's kind of a vote, I guess. I mean,
Okay.
I'm okay with it, and I think I'd probably be okay with even any tweaks to it, but if you want to have it sort of formal to approve that motion, then that might be one way to do it.
Okay, so I'll come up with a mechanism somewhere along those lines.
Yeah.
So I'll give folks till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to get their comments in, and then I will send out a notice to everybody on the council to go in and record your support or opposition of moving this forward. Obviously, if you have opposition, please state what you're opposed to so we can address that area. And then once I have a majority of folks supporting that, then I will take that and package it up, put a little bow on it, and send it on up the hill.
I've only got one conflict, and that's tomorrow. Just I've got a 9 o'clock meeting in Manhattan, so I'm gonna only be in my office here for probably till 8:30. So if there's comments, that I'll check Teams before I leave. But if something comes in after 8:30, I probably won't see it. But I mean, I think we're all on the same page, so I can't imagine there'd be anything that would be, just something I wouldn't agree with. So
Yeah.
But I'll review anything anybody puts into it by 8:30 and just put my John Henry on it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll probably give till 8 o'clock or so Friday morning for folks to.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's okay with me then. Yeah, that'll work.
So if you get your comments in by 10 tomorrow, and then get your position recorded by Friday morning, that would allow me to get that up there by.
Good, because I'll be back in the afternoon, so I can look at whatever everybody puts out there. So thanks.
Great. And if someone does have a concern or some major holdup, that's okay. Please get it forward so that we address that in a timely fashion. So.
Hey, Craig, this is Paul. Sorry about being late. I just got stuck on another call.
Sure. And Paul, you can catch up with me later if you missed a lot of this discussion. We can describe it.
Okay.
In short, this is all about getting the council procurement recommendations sent up to the governor's office. And the text in red here is the primary text that's changed in the document. So take a look at all that and see if it flows and states it well.
Okay.
Again, second paragraph that was added addressed the fact that we really hadn't discussed the cost analysis of a centralized office, which is probably part of what was motivating the auditors for making that recommendation. And so I wanted to add something that addresses that the council did not find that the cost savings were significant enough to overcome the challenges that may actually make it more expensive to do that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at it, Craig. Thanks.
All right, so we will proceed with that plan, and I'll get that stuff out to the council members after the meeting. So for those of you that need to jump off to attend your other meetings, please feel free at this point to do so. Otherwise, I'll continue with the agenda.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for jumping in to comment on that. So.
Yep.
All righty. All right, the UAS plan. So Steve has been busy, and I've been working on trying to update these documents as well. So I'm going to jump over to the next one that we're working on. The citizen interaction piece is the one that we've made the most progress on, the edits and updates on. So I'll bring that up here. Oops, we're storing this under general. At some point, we're going to have to move this and get the organization back, but I'll refrain from doing so at the moment just to keep people from getting lost.
And I think I just made a couple of edits. I got some feedback from DOA legal on those, so you'll see those comments in that draft. Correct.
Okay, I think Joe,
I just posted them.
Yeah, I see that, and I think the edits you're putting in is probably in the wrong document. We're gonna have to get clean so we don't get confused.
Oh shoot,
So
I'm sorry.
What we want to do is we're working on the one below that, I wish Teams would hold your sorting every time you look away and come back. Reshuffles it. What we want to do is work on the draft memo, because the memo version of the policy document. Steve was wise to put track changes enabling on, so that's in place, so it makes it a little easier to track what's going on, although it does make it a little harder to read. Basically, under purpose and scope, they started to change for just language to remove references to a policy and more of to recommendations for the memorandum and recommendations for state agencies for best practices and things such as that, because this council does not set policy. And my understanding is we give a recommendation to the governor's office. The governor's office will then in some ways would advise or tell, I believe, DOA to establish policy for all the executive branch agencies on this. So that would be their job. So recommended requirements, started editing this area just to try to make it flow a little better, because it just seemed to break up a little bit. So this text got moved down below. I won't go into all the details of this. The one area we have hung up on was around the sentence here. And so I've started working on that to see if we can incorporate what we talked about last week. Let me see if I can actually I turn that off and actually see the text now. I don't know how to do that in the Teams version of this.
If you open it in the desktop app, then
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah, that's me too.
So I'll switch over to that. Didn't work. Try this again. It failed to open and close the document on me. There we go. All right, so now I'll share that. All right, that should be coming up now. Looks like a little text setting to do in the title there. All right, so I'm going to do view. It's all moved on me. Oh wait, it's under review. All right, so let's go down to that section. So way I started wording this. So to me, see, even though all national airspace is under the sole authority and control of the FAA, as a courtesy prior to conducting operations over private property, state agencies should attempt to notify property owners before their flights. To maintain positive public relations, if the property owner insists to oppose flights over their property ownership, it is recommended that the flight be delayed, if possible, until a resolution with the property owner is resolved, unless it is an emergency flight operation. This property owner notifications enhance open and government transparency. Somebody start to say something.
Could you, instead of it is recommended, would it be okay to say the state agency may delay the flight? Or do you guys, I don't know.
Well, that's the question for the council, is what kind of language do we want to put in here?
Do you guys want to recommend it, or just tell the agency they should consider it?
Well, that's another option for wording.
Yeah, I like considered a better, because it's recommended sometimes is like, you know, you should do this, but it considered is like, that's, you know, you've got some options on the table, and it gives you some flexibility to think about it.
Yeah, because we could be dealing with a very unreasonable
Yeah.
person. And so we should look at their situation, consider the risk, and decide from there.
See, I come from the ex-political world, and I always look at the result of a disagreement over the fence or the gate turns into a letter to the editor.
Yeah, an editor, 2 senators, and a director.
Yep, that's the worst thing.
Right.
And so I
Part of
guess I like consider. I mean, I think that's good.
May consider delaying the flight.
And again, this is only advisory, so I guess they can, when they put together an official policy, they can take the ball and run someplace with it.
And I was just looking over the EPA's recent policy that they came out, and when they're dealing with private property, they use the term may.
Cool.
Good.
We might want to reword then, unless emergency flight operation, because I wouldn't want to then say you have to do it. But okay, is that so we can wordsmith that a little bit, but I captured that in that sense. So may consider, we like the language of that better.
Yeah. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was trying to word it such that they're opposing the flight over the property ownership, but trying to keep that concept that they actually don't own the airspace here, but in a way that was a little more clear for the situation, without overly basically looking like your big government saying we have rights and we're going to use them type of position, right?
Well,
Oh.
my only comment is that I do like that language, emergency, because I look at law enforcement, if this is going to be something like the highway patrol or something, where they got a guy that is hiding out someplace and they really do need to look for him, and it's an emergency situation that okay, fine, we heard your problem, we understand your issues, but that we got to do it, and that's the way it's going to be.
I think you're still covered, Steve. This is Paul. I think you're still covered with saying may consider delaying the flight. Well, yeah, I'm with law enforcement. I considered it, and I have an emergency situation. I'm going to go forward.
Yeah,
I don't know if you need, unless it's an emergency flight operation.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah, I was just wondering if you put, if property owner insists to pose flights over their property, the agency may consider delaying, canceling, or altering the flight. End it right there, and don't even put the if possible stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
And then period after flight, and I don't know if you need the rest.
Right.
Because it might be a simple fine. We don't really need to go there. We'll go plan B.
Yeah,
I don't know, just
that's good.
And get rid of that other part. I think we should change the wording a little bit, because we do want unless an emergency flight operation, but I feel like it doesn't fit right there. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, depending on the nature of the emergency, you may not even be notifying people.
Right.
I mean, because the time to go up and knock on a door and talk to someone and tell them that you have an emergency going on, we're going to do this, by then you may be losing precious time. Ideally, it'd be great to have somebody from the organization going up and notifying people while the other people are already conducting the emergency flight.
could you put that unless it's an emergency in the first sentence then? Prior to conducting operations over private property, unless it's an emergency, state agency should attempt to notify.
Yeah, that would be good, I think.
And then you can kind of clean it up from down below.
Right.
I mean, it kind of makes that sound so long though, but
Yeah, trying to figure out how to.
yeah. makes that sentence a paragraph.
Yeah, or a lot of commas.
Yeah, so I don't know if that is better or not.
Well, either one way or the other, I think we can do it. Well, one of us can take a look at that and wordsmith that and make it work. I think we know what we're trying to do, but I don't want to sit here for 5 minutes trying to do that with everybody. Anything else in here that we need to discuss? I think we're making better progress on that section there. I add a little language down here. Keeping in mind Part 107 restrictions, which is basically what I think was Steve had listed above here. Citizen privacy concerns, which gets down below, and other applicable state statutes such as, and these are the ones that he had in there.
This is where Don Harris had some additional language that he was just going to add. And I could paste it into where you could see it. And he just had some comments. I just did, so you should see it here in a second. And you know, his comment on this section was that he just wanted to, you know, basically reframe this in a way what doesn't require legal review, because he feels like that any one agency wouldn't feel comfortable defining what is or is not acceptable for another agency when it comes to citizen right privacy. And then he added this language here that the agency's using UAS, and you could see it on your screen there at the bottom, you know, citizen right privacy, and then it's really the second paragraph there. I just added that agencies using UAS should be aware of privacy implementations. This was a suggestion from Don, so I'm just kind of, I added it to the other document. I apologize for not adding it to the memo here, but for this review. But
Okay, no, that's great. Great to get some legal input on some of this stuff. And one of you, Gordy, I think you sent some legal stuff, and I haven't incorporated those pieces yet in, but I think you had an attorney that made a bunch of comments on one of these documents that I thought was pretty helpful. So
Yeah, he wanted to take a lot out.
well, and the other thing too is that attorneys get concerned when you say too much, right?
Yeah, that's where
right.
he's
And that's where it's good to do that, and we have to try to walk that balance between the memo, you know, that we're dealing with recommendation, and the actual language that they would put into something that's official. And I kind of, you know, we originally started that way with a policy format that we were trying to limit how much we said just to keep from stepping in legal things. And then the governor's office is like, can you flesh that out and explain why you're doing this? So, all right, we'll go the other way. But I'm concerned, you know, and the other thing to think about on this, right, is that in another 3 weeks, we're going to be serving a whole different administration that may have a different take on how they want to handle these things. So where we'll have some opportunity to give guidance into that. How we handle and what language we use, it may shift again a little bit. So we'll keep that in mind too. But if you, Gordy, if you wanted to start incorporating some of what your attorney put into one of these documents or putting in notes, feel free to do so.
okay.
Before I do, otherwise, you know.
Maybe I'll share his email with the folks here, and then everybody can kind of take a look, because he had a lot of changes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't want to go mess up the whole damn document, so.
Yeah, well, you can certainly do it that way, and then everyone can look at that document, and then we can discuss what portions of that we should adopt or not adopt, depending on our feeling. But again, we have to remember that this isn't, we're not setting policy for the state. What we're doing is giving the governor's office a recommendation on what policy they should be adopting. and why we think they should adopt those policies or not adopt those policies or best practices or standards or whatever it is that we recommend. Yeah, so the laws are constantly changing. And some of this may happen in the session. Hopefully the laws don't change a whole lot between sessions, so at least we get a 2-year reprieve or year and a half reprieve once we figure out how to read the new law.
Right. That was, that was kind of his comment too, was that these are just not simple legal issues, and legal determination may be based or changed based on how the information is obtained.
Yeah, and
So
the change statute in some ways is almost easier to respond to. Where we really are struggling, I think, is what is the definition of citizen privacy and public and privacy information when you're doing data collected from a drone. Is someone standing in the backyard of a resident that you took a picture of from 300 feet high personal identifiable information or not that we have to be worried about? And when does it cross the line and become that? Is it that a reasonable person could identify the person, but if they're in a public space, it doesn't matter, then they're in the public? That's kind of the line I think we're taking. But because I don't want to also make it so much effort and work for an agency, and this just came up in my department this morning, is we have different programs that want to start doing missions. How do we start organizing internally the flow of the data to make sure that those programs are following all the guidelines that we're formatting here, right? And that someone is reviewing that information to make sure that any personal identifiable information is being identified and removed from public dissemination or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think one could make the argument that it is it is considered PII, and it would just be because of the location, and you can get that information tying that back, because our state law specifies that you must have first initial or first name and last name, and then the additional information, which could be an address, and so they kind of specified in such a way that lots of things are PII, and but what does that mean to I think what here in terms of citizens' right to privacy, I don't know, and that's.
Yeah, because their name and their address is already out there as public information, right?
Yes, public PII. Yep.
So the only thing we've really identified is a timestamp that they were actually there at a particular time. Well, if it's their home, then they own it. That would be expected, but is that really PII? Probably not, I'm guessing. But that's where it's not well defined, to my knowledge, unless NIST has. But
yeah, NIST has there's really two different versions of PII. There's a public PII such as that you do a Google search and find it, and then there's the private PII that would be your first name, last name, social security number. That would be the private. So yeah, what is this? I would say this would fall in lines of the public PII.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. So I don't know that we've made a whole lot of other changes to that one. And I don't want to just necessarily take up people's time if people haven't taken the time to look at it here. I will look and jump over to the other document. There's a couple of documents we didn't actually look at last time that have been added. So I'm going to jump back over to Teams and we can look at those real quick here. Slow there. Let's see. There was the. I'm just going to go sort this again. Get to the top.
Hey, Craig, I have to apologize. I do have to move on, but I did. I added some others too, but I I'm hoping I didn't make it. I already made it to the memo. So I'm hoping I made the other changes into the right document. I will review, and if there's a memo version of that, I will add those comments in from DOA legal.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. Bye.
So the other document we didn't mention last week that Jen had uploaded is this UAS Council MUS coordination doc. So just calling people's attention to that, to take a look at that document. That starts to address section 3 of the executive order. What is the opportunity for integration and coordination between the university systems and the state agencies? So she did this document to identify a couple areas where we could have that coordination. It looks like it's focused around training and research. So take a look at that, see if you have any other thoughts or ideas that we want to discuss with the university system on opportunities there. There was the call on Monday. Steve, did you end up participating in that thing at all? Butch, I think you put it forward.
No, I didn't. I was stuck. Yeah, I wanted to.
Butch, were you in on that? Did you attend it? Butch still with us? I think we lost Butch. So what that was, and I'll just touch base on it real quick. It was actually somewhat interesting. I didn't get to participate in most of the individual demos by the vendors. It was called Blue Small UAS,
Yeah.
Secure Trusted Drones for State and Local Governments. And the first hour or so, they had several different people on there, and they were addressing the topic of concern of drones and where the components are sourced. And I believe the most of the day's presentations were about, I think they had identified 5 or 6 different companies that had a product that avoided getting UAV components sourced out of China, and had other locations on that they had vetted. And they were talking a bit about how do you vet your craft to make sure that you meet those security things and such. So on that, and so it was of interest. I don't know if that's still available as a recording for folks to look at.
I'll check that out. Thanks.
Yeah.
I missed that too. Where was that at, Cray? Who was sponsoring that?
Oh, let's see. Who was that?
Yeah, it was a webinar.
I got it from Butch had forwarded it to folks. It was, who was this? I don't know if I can get to it to find out who put it on. It's by somebody called the Defense Innovation Unit, Blue SUAS. So it was mostly revolving around using UAVs for police and type of emergency responders type of utilizations.
Yeah, I was just reading the DOI memo that identified the Blue Small UAS availability for federal agencies earlier today. Actually, I was just reviewing it. I didn't know they had a webinar that was describing some of it. We have an interest in it because a lot of the Office of Surface Mining stuff that we do, we can't do on the Department of Interior because, you know, of the grounding. And I think the DOI put this forward to the Department of Interior as a way to get around that. And from what I can tell, it seems like these units specifically coming from this program are exempt from the grounding on DOI.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think so. And I think that's because they've certified that their components are not putting things at risk. If you have that other document, if it hasn't been put to the team site, James, why don't you go ahead and feel free to do that so we can take a look at that too.
Okay.
One of the interesting things, and I'll just comment on this briefly, that they had, they talked about, they did a demo with, was a city of, I think it's Chula Vista, California, who has deployed drones across the city for emergency response 911 calls. And they were, I think they estimated 70% of their calls now end up getting a UAV deployed to investigate the scene of the 911. and they have this. They have a guy up on the roof who's the the pilot in command actually, and visual observer. Although they've actually, I think, worked out agreements to get beyond line of sight. There's a 911 responder down in the building when a call comes in and they determine that the UAV could be of assistance. The person down below fires up the appropriate drone depending on where it's located in the city. That takes off and gets up, and then the pilot in command is hands off the controls to the pilot in command up on the roof. And of course, Chula Vista is a fairly flat area apparently, and they got enough tall building that they can handle this. But they're primarily flying it in the blind by the person, I believe, down below, and is flying it based on the UAV's cameras. The person up above is making sure they're not getting sideways on any other emergency response like a helicopter or tall building, and they're using that in assistance to 911. The example they gave was a call that came in about a guy a drug dealer who was passed out in his car with all his illegal belongings sitting there in his lap, and they could see that. Somebody called that in. They were able to use the UAV to actually identify the car, see the materials. As police closed in, the guy got out of the car and started running, and the UAV was able to keep the police on track on where this guy was going. So they were eventually able to wear him out and apprehend him. And so it was an interesting demonstration. They are very well organized in how they are operating this across the city. They've gotten the city council on board with this. They have a very strong public citizen transparency interaction piece. The public is well informed that they only fly these things in response to a 911 event. And that's the only reason they fly. Because of that deal. And so that's where I started picking up the transparency piece being so important in this council and the role we might have to play in that to keep the public informed. And that's where I think getting more information out there is of benefit to us, because if we ever get to the point where their drones are getting utilized for something like that, that is a critical component, especially here in Montana, I think. All right, I'm gonna just to wrap up the last few minutes we have here for council discussion. Any other recommendations for the next meeting?
I modified the definitions too. I don't know if everybody saw it. Added aircraft into the definitions document that I threw out there.
Yep, I think I took a look at it.
I don't know if that was okay, what I put out there.
Let me grab where the teams go. So yeah, an airspace definition added. Did you have another one?
That was
Oh,
it.
national airspace system.
Oh yeah, that's out there too. Kind of lengthy, but
Yeah, no, it's all right. And I actually added a sentence to that one, Steve, the area of atmosphere above ground level as a definition, and then we go into explanation of how that came to be in a sense. So out there for folks to look at too.
good.
Any other discussion items now or for next week? Okay. Any public comment? Do we have any public members on? Not aware we do. We've been dropping members as the meeting goes on. Okay, I have one other item to address a little bit. That is having to do with continuing of the executive order. So Governor's Office is proposing to continue the executive order with an extension. They are proposing now that we will have our Montana UAS plan, which is section 2 of the remaining executive order, completed by the end of June 2021. Based on where we are with our drafts, I think that's a feasible target. I wanted to feel out people on that.
Yeah, I think it is, Craig. This
Yep.
is my, I mean, there's some,
Okay.
yeah.
they were willing to go to September if we thought we needed it, but I thought June, I think June is probably good, but,
I would agree.
okay. Let me just look real quick to see what other comments they had coming for the sake of the council. Where'd that go? Probably some kind of a line just identifying that the council, so the council be extended for another 2 years, and that the council is a resource for state agencies in implementing the plan. And so, and we can discuss more about what that might look like in the future, I think. But and so those are the main ones I think that'll end up happening to continue to allow us to complete the work that we've started. So, all right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Anything else from folks?
Do we get a free Mavic or something for going an extra year or something? Is there something pot at the end of the rainbow? Was that the deal I heard?
It would be nice. It would be nice if we can hit up the new administration for that. Do we all get a pocket phone we can fly?
Yeah, by that time it'd be worth $100 probably.
What are our folks? We lost half the folks, but are you guys around to meet next week? Next week will be the 23rd, I think, of December. I'll be working, but
Ray, this is Paul. I won't be working.
was that a will or won't?
Will not.
Okay.
This is James. I am not working, but I'll still probably be around to attend.
Okay. Well, I think I'll probably leave the meeting on the calendar, but if we don't have very many people, we'll probably just turn it into a work session for the day to make some progress on some of these documents and call it good for anybody that shows up. So.
Well, Jen, yeah, send us out an email or something. Jen may be back by then, I think. Maybe she was.
Yeah, it could be. And we'll get a report from her on what she did.
That'd be good.
It'd be fun. So. All right, folks, thanks very much. We'll call this meeting concluded and have a good week. If I don't talk to you, have a great Christmas.
Yeah.
Thanks, Craig. You too.
Thanks,
Take
Craig.
care.
You guys.
Bye, everybody.